McBride. Welcome to my brushes workshop. In this workshop, I'm going to be going through all the different brushes that we need to use to create nail art, why we use them, the different effects and techniques for using different brushes. So I hope you enjoy it. Let's get started. So the first set of brushes I'm going to be going through are the brushes that we use for one stroke. So I have 3 different one stroke brushes here. Okay, so I'm just going to take the lids off so you can all see. This is the Nailchemy one stroke number 1. So the smaller the number, the smaller the brush. So as you can see, this is really quite a small brush. It's angled and it's flat. So the reason it's angled and flat is because when you're creating one stroke effects, you taper it out and then you need that point to create a fine, crisp line at the top of your one stroke. Okay, so that's the one stroke number 1. This is the one stroke number 2, which is slightly bigger. Again, it's angled and it's a flat brush. You can see how flat and tapered the end of that brush is. And this is the one stroke number 4. Again, angled, flat and tapered at the end. So I'm just going to pop all those brushes together in size order so you can see the difference in sizes. So the reason we would have such a large one going down to such a smaller one is so that, for example, when we're creating petals or leaves, you don't have to try and create a deeper leaf or petal with a small brush. So it's really good, even though the larger one, the number 4, seems quite large, it's perfect to create that one stroke effect for leaves or larger petals on flowers. Another technique that you can use your one stroke brushes for are for blending and shading. So when we're doing character painting, you can use your number 1 brush, for example, because it's got such a crisp tapered edge. You can go in to the line really well and taper it out and then blend that back. So I will teach you how to do that in the other workshops. So that is what I use my one stroke brushes for as well. Okay, now coming to the end of the use, the best way to clean your brushes is to use either gel wipe off to get rid of any residue of the colour pigment of the gels that you've been using. And then what I personally do is I put a little bit of base or top coat into the brush so it's clear, and then I pop the lid back on. So by doing that, it keeps the hairs on the brush nice and flat and in the arrangement that they need to be in. So for this, it keeps it tapered and flat in that nice shape that it's meant to stay in, so that when you put it back into its case, it's ready for the next time that you use it. Dotting tools. So dotting tools are probably one of the first nail art tools that you would have ever come across. It's normally in college packs that we get these, because really simple nail art can be created with these really quickly. So I'm just going to run through them. These are double-ended. Most dotting tools are. Okay, so you have the larger size on one end and then a smaller size on the other. So it's really good because they're double-ended that you can go through designs really quite quickly if you're doing different size dots, because you can just flip it over in your hand, dip it into the paint and dip it onto the nail. Okay, so these are the different size dotting tools that I use. And also on this one, you will notice that it's not a ball, it's a point. So this is really good. You can use this in several different ways. You can do really ultra fine, like pinprick dots with this, but you can also use this to help to create different effects if you're doing 3D acrylic sculpting. So they are dotting tools. I have got a free workshop on the workshop group of how to create different designs with dotting tools and dotting tools alone. There's loads of different techniques that you can use with these, with dots and with swirls, and also with marbling as well. Your dotting tool comes in handy for that. So that is a quick rundown on dotting tools. When you come to clean them, I just clean mine off with a little bit of gel wipe off on a lint-free pad, pop it into the pad, give it a good twist, making sure that you get into that crease. So if I show you on a larger one, you have a crease between the ball and the shank of the handle. You want to make sure that you get into that crease and clean it effectively and properly, because you don't want any product to collect in there, because it can affect the dot when you come to do it on a nail. If that is full up with old products, then you won't get a nice clean dot. So make sure you clean your dotting tools really well after you've used them. Silicone tools. So silicone tools, a lot of people have, but they don't necessarily know what they're for, how to use them, or why we would use them. So these ones are quite large, as you can see, compared to the mini silicone tools that I've got here. The larger ones are like our dotting tools, so they are double-ended and they come in different shapes. So this one, as you can see, is angled, and then this one has like a cutout on it, so it's got like a concave cutout on the silicone, you see that? And then this one has got a angled point, so it's flat on both sides going down into a point. And this one again is the same as the other one, it's just got an angle cut out into it. So the reason we would use silicone tools is because they are great for burnishing in pigments, which I will be going through in another workshop, but they are also great when you're doing 3D work. So if you're doing faces in acrylic, to be able to, if you don't want to use a brush, because they're silicone, they don't absorb any of your liquid. So you can really push into, for example, if you were doing a nose going up into an eye, you can really push down into that product and get that indentation, and you're not going to get any residue come off onto your silicone. Okay, so you can also, I know some people when they're doing foiling, if they're foiling onto a gel polish, they will put the foil on top of the nail and rub over it with their silicone tool. So you would use a flatter edge for that, to be able to transfer the foils down onto the nail. So that is what we use silicone tools for mainly. And then these ones are exactly the same. They're not double-ended. These are from Nailchemy, but they are the different shapes. So you have got a pointed one. You have got the cutout. You can see how much smaller they are. You have got the, so this is a bit like a one-stroke brush, so it's flat on both sides and tapered down into a point. You have got the flat-ended one, and you've got another pointed one there. Okay, so again, these are great for if you're doing really fine 3D work in acrylic, to be able to push into and create eye sockets and noses and mouths and anything like that that you don't want to use your acrylic brush for because you don't want to get products into it and you don't want to absorb any of that liquid, you want to keep the play in the product, these are great for that. And also 3D roses and bows and things. So I am going to be doing a workshop how to make the best of using your silicone tools, because 9 times out of 10 we've got them in our kit and we don't really use them, but they are great little tools and really handy to have to create lots of different effects. Blending brushes. So blending brushes can vary quite differently, and it does depend on you as a nail tech as to which you prefer to use. So I've got 3 different types here. So I've got the flat-ended tapered blending brush, I've got a round tapered blending brush, and in the middle there I've also got a fan brush. Now 9 times out of 10 people will use a fan brush. It's nice and wide, it's nice and pliable, so when you're blending in products, especially for mixed medias and things like that, for backgrounds, they're really great to use because they cover a lot of area quite quickly. In order to create an ombre or a blend in that gel polish. It's not necessarily something that you would use every day on clients because, as you can see, they really are quite wide. So if you were to use this on a client and they had their nail, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be wider and you're going to get a lot of product on the skin, which obviously we don't want to do. But there's lots of different techniques of how to use this brush to your advantage to be able to create blending techniques with that. Okay, so the other 2 brushes are your flat-ended and your round-ended. So I'm just going to show you the difference here. So this is like a gel brush, what you would use for enhancements. You can use it for that as well. I'm not a gel tech, so I use this brush for blending. And it's also a really good brush to be able to crisp up any lines as well, or any, if you make them mistakes, to be able to go back under that line and create a nice crisp line. Okay, and then you have got the rounded blending brush, which is exactly the same as the flat one, but obviously it's got a rounded end. Okay, again, this is great for shading, so you can pop your darker color in, fade that out, blend it out, and then do the patting technique, and that will help to blend your polish. You can use these as well for an ombre, so if you're doing a baby boomer, they're great to be able to achieve that effect. If you're doing a sunset, it would be really good, and they're the perfect size for a client's nail because you can go in and be a little bit more accurate than you would with the fan brush. So your fan brush, obviously, it's an all or nothing, whereas this, you can really concentrate into the area that you need to go into and blend out that product. So that's the blending brush. Okay, so fine art brushes. So these are the brushes which you can probably tell from my brushes that are the most used. Now, as a nail tech, I can sit here and tell you which ones are best used for what, but you will get your favorites and you will find a way of making your brush work for you. With fine art, it's really important that the brush does the work for you so that you're not struggling to create certain effects with the wrong brush. Okay, so I'm just going to go through these 2 first. These are, I'm just going to move these out of the way. So these 2 are striping brushes. So you can see the only difference is that they are different in size, and quite a bit different in size. So this one is thicker at the top and this one's thinner, but they are the same in length. Okay, and they are both, if I can show you, they are both tapered at the edge. So you can't see it so much on the fine one because it is so fine, it sort of disappears into nothing. But with this one, you can see it's a tapered edge. All right, so it's with your striping brush that you will create lines, you will create fine line details, You will create straight lines, you can create optical illusion lines, anything that requires you to travel the full length of the nail in one stroke. These brushes will allow you to do that. Okay, so there are going to be quite a few workshops that are going to include these brushes. These brushes are what you need. Okay, if you start off with a larger brush, I would recommend, because it's easier to control and see where you're going, because it is that slightly bit thicker. But then you will eventually move down to a much finer brush, but it is obviously still as long as the thicker one, but experience will allow you to move down in size in these, and confidence as well, to be able to know exactly where you're putting that line in one swift motion. So that's the lining brushes. The next detailing brush, so this is a this is a number 2 brush, sorry. So it's got quite a fat belly, it's got a tapered end, and the flank of the brush is really quite thick. So this brush is great for when you're doing character work and you need to do faces, hair and clothing, because what this does is it holds quite a lot of the gel polish or whichever medium that you're using, but it's got a nice tapered end. So that tapered end allows you to go right up into the nooks and crannies and to taper it down out so you create nice crisp edges. So this brush I use 99.9% of the time, especially when I'm doing character work. So I would highly recommend that you get this brush if you are doing character painting. So it's a number 2 brush, so it's quite a thick brush in the grand scheme of things. I know it doesn't look like it here, but when I show you the next one, you'll see how much thicker it is. But this brush is what you use 99.9% of the time when you're doing nail art, because it can also, because of the size of the belly, you can also shade and taper out your colour with this brush. Because it's got a point, it doesn't affect any of the nooks and crannies within your painting or your character or whatever it is that you're doing. Okay, so I'm just going to compare that to the ultra fine Nailchemy 000. Okay, so that it's so tiny. So I would say this is medium in length. It's not a short brush, but it is medium in length. So if I was to put it up against the number 2, it's not too far off the same sort of length as the number 2, but you can see how much finer it is. Okay, now it is also, I'm going to try and get a really good close-up of this. It is also tapered at the edge. So this is an amazing brush for when you're doing lips and eyes and eyelashes and outlines, because of the length of it, it holds a nice amount of medium, but you can create a really nice smooth line. So you can see how easy that moves around. Okay, it's great for swirls as well, so you can swirl it. So it's getting used to the medium and getting used to the technique of using such a fine brush. So if you are signing up to the character painting workshops, the 2, or I should say 3 main brushes that you will need is your lining brush, your number 2 brush, and your 000 ultra fine. They are the 3 brushes that you need to create perfect line work and also character painting. So when it comes to your brushes, it's really important to look after them. A lot of them are very expensive, and if you have paid out for professional brushes, it's really important that you make them last and you look after them and care for them. So I would always recommend that if they come with a cover, to always put the cover back on the brush. And before you put it away, make sure it's super clean, because you don't want any gel polish residue sitting in the bottom of the brush, and then when you come to use it next time, that colour or pigment being transferred into the new colour that you want to use, especially if you're using whites and light colours. It can be a bit of a nightmare. So when it comes to cleaning your brushes, I would recommend to use gel wipe off solution on a lint-free pad, and go through your brush like you would a new brush, and clean it thoroughly from the base right through to the tip, making sure that there's no fluff or build-up of product within that brush whatsoever. And then what I do with my brushes, if they have a cover on them, which most of them do, I dip them in a little bit of gel base coat or gel top coat, and I don't make the brush dripping with it. I just make it so that the product is sitting in there and keeping the shape of the brush. So that's why I do that, because if it's a flat angled brush, you want to keep that angle nice and crisp. If it's a fine liner brush, you want to keep that fine tip, and if it's a lining brush, you want to keep it nice and straight. So by putting that little bit of clear product in there, it helps to do that, and then you can pop the lid back on and it's good to go, ready for the next time that you're going to use it. Never ever use acetone on your brushes. A lot of brushes are synthetic, so the hairs on them will melt and they will distort and they will come out of shape, which obviously you don't want to do. So the second you put acetone onto your brushes, it's going to ruin your brush. If an accident does happen, so if you haven't stored your brushes correctly, so for example, if you have a lining brush that has split or has bent, or the tip of one of your detailing brushes has buckled, then the first thing you need to do is take the gel polish, if you've stored it in gel polish, out of the brush. So clean it with some gel wipe off solution, boil the kettle, put some hot water into a cup or a mug, and then pop your brush in there just for a few seconds, and that should help to restore the brushes, because it's a bit like hair. You can have straight hair and curl it, and then once you've washed it, the curl will come out. So that would be my advice. If you have got a brush that has got a bend, a buckle or a split in it, then don't think it's the end of the brush. Certainly don't cut the brush, because when you cut a brush, you distort the tip of the brush. So if it's tapered into a point or tapered down into an edge, the second you start cutting a brush, you distort that shape that it's been made into. So you don't want to do that. So the first thing you need to do, if you have a brush that has got a fault in it, put some hot water on it. Once you've done that, dry the brush off just in a lint-free pad, running it through your fingers, and then again put that clear gel polish on there and then pop it back and store it correctly. A great way as well of storing your brushes is in a brush case, because it will stand up, so you can stand it up at the side of your desk. All your brushes will be to hand, but they will then be able to be put away in the case. They're safe, they're out of direct sunlight, and they're all in one place, so you're not scrabbling around looking for brushes when you're trying to do a certain technique. So brush cases are really good way of keeping your brushes nice and tidy and all in one place. And that's it for this workshop, I think. So if you guys have got any questions whatsoever, as always, just message me on the group, private message me, or pop a message in this workshop, and we will get back to you as soon as we possibly can. Hopefully you've enjoyed it and you understand the minefield that is brushes a little bit more now. I haven't gone through any of the acrylic brushes because I feel that that's a completely separate section, so I'll be doing a completely different workshop on that, but I just wanted to cover all the nail art brushes for you. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all soon in the next workshop. Bye!